Welcome to today's segment of She Speaks. It is called Created Free because we are. And we are here to talk about a very real and probably many of us would say overwhelmingly impossible topic. And that would be sex trafficking 2021. January is that National Sex Trafficking Awareness Month. And so we have invited some of the She Leads Michigan women who have said, au contraire, God is able. He cares about people and he has a way to save them. And basically, we are rescued people if we follow Jesus. He has rescued us at Christmas, and now we are here to help rescue others. So we are going to talk from three different perspectives. We have Brittany Jacobson, who is with the organization called Created Free. We have Laura Pipus, who's the Associate Director in the United Way of Monroe and Lenawee counties. And we have Becky McDonald, who is from WAR, Women at Risk International. So all of these people have a breadth and depth of knowledge on this topic, and we're so grateful to have them. And Michelle, we're so happy to have you here today as well. This is an amazing topic, isn't it?
Oh, Nancy, I'm so excited about today because we have, again, some incredible guests, but the topic today is really just, it's so relevant, right, to our time. And also we have some women who are doing some absolutely incredible work around stopping human trafficking. And I was just sharing before we started, how our show really brings this picture from macro to micro level engagement, meaning that we're interviewing women who are involved from all levels of system, direct work to community work, all the way up to international work. And so, yes, I cannot wait for our guests to be interviewed today. Yeah.
We are really thankful to be able to have people ready and willing to share about the great work God has laid on their heart and to hear some of the stories of what has been happening with those who have the boots on the ground, correct?
That's right. That's right. So let's go ahead and just move into bringing some of our guests on. And again, the beauty of She Speaks is that our guests are all a part of She Leads Michigan, which is such an honor to be connected to each of these women and to consider them friends. So I'd like to introduce Brittany Jacobson. She's the founder of Freedom Paddle Company, a paddleboard, kayak, and snowshoe rental company utilizing the great outdoors as a source of healing for women who have experienced sexual exploitation and human trafficking here in Michigan. So Brittany, thank you so much for being here and giving of your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and would you like to share a little bit more about how you got involved in this issue and Created Free?
Yeah, so I actually got connected with an organization shortly after I came to Grand Rapids. I am located in Grand Rapids, and I went to college at Cornerstone University, and they had a little conference on human trafficking, and they ended up bringing in this woman who was doing strip club outreach at the time. And I was like, man, I feel like that's something I could really get involved in. And so my sister-in-law and I went to one of their Bible studies, and I quickly found out that I wasn't actually old enough to get into the strip clubs at 19 in West Michigan. And so I really began to pray, like, God, where do you want me in all of this? What is my role in all of this?
I'm interrupting you, but Bible studies were happening in the strip clubs? Is that what
No, so it was a Bible study at a church, and then the team would meet there, kind of, get on the same page, and then head out to outreach into strip clubs.
Okay.
And so, just started to pray about where I was supposed to be and all of that. And I really enjoyed baking, and so I started making cupcakes, and I would bring them to outreach Bible study. And then my sister-in-law came with me, and she was old enough to go, and so the team and her would bring the cupcakes on outreach. And one of the struggles that they were having was actually getting in the door of the strip clubs. And so, it turned out that bouncers couldn't say no to cupcakes, and we started getting into the door more frequently, and just bringing little gifts for the girls and cupcakes for the bouncers and stuff like that. So eventually they kind of fizzled out in the Grand Rapids area, so we kind of picked up where they left off. And we also started going into illicit massage parlors, which basically operate as legal brothels here within Grand Rapids city limits. And so we have 16 of those in Grand Rapids that we're kind of keeping an eye on regularly and going into. COVID has definitely changed the way that we do outreach for sure, as strip clubs have been closed and stuff like that. But yes, we started in 2013 doing outreach. And so this is our 8th year of just going into strip clubs and illicit massage parlors. So we actually ended up expanding to Traverse City as well. My mom leads our Traverse City outreach team. And then we have an awesome group of ladies in Cadillac as well, who go into their local strip club and are part of our overarching created free outreach branch. But one of the major, I guess the major needs of the girls that we meet in the clubs is sustainable employment. And that was something that we struggled to provide, especially, I mean, we were doing resume help and stuff like that, but really, you know, being able to provide sustainable employment for them after they leave the clubs is ultimately what keeps them out of the clubs. And so we started Freedom Paddle Company. And so we do paddleboard, kayak, and snowshoe rentals year round. And yeah, we provide sustainable employment for the girls that we meet on outreach. And so we have only hired one girl so far, but we're hoping by this summer to kind of ramp up our programming and yeah, eventually kind of bridge that gap between sex industry and what they actually want to be doing with their lives. So
Brittany, what I'm understanding is through the paddle company, your outreach, well, let me back up. So your outreach connects with these women, and how do you do that? I'd love to hear a story of how you do that, or a story of hope from one of the women that you have connected with, and then moving them or transitioning them into employment. So essentially you're connecting with them, building relationship, and then building an employment through the Freedom Paddle Company. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
So basically we go into strip clubs and illicit massage parlors and just kind of, first and foremost, make sure that women are safe. We're not necessarily there to get every stripper out of every strip club. But for the girls who do feel unsafe or they've experienced some kind of sexual trauma at the hands of the sex industry, we're there for them. And so whether or not a girl decides to leave the sex industry with us is irrelevant to us helping her with holistic resources. So what we've done is create a community of partnerships within Grand Rapids, Traverse City, and Cadillac of like partner organizations who help with dental care, pro bono medical support, lawyers, all that kind of stuff. So we've basically just been building up this network of friends who will help us come alongside these women in a holistic way. And so
I love that. So you're reaching them with basic needs, which really connects them back to some grounding, essentially.
Right. Yes. Yep. So we realized it was just too big of it's not a one size fits all by any means for any of these girls. And they're all coming from such varied backgrounds. And so if we can just address the basic needs that they have, more than likely we can build a relationship outside of the clubs, because sometimes it's really hard under bright lights and loud music to build a relationship with these girls. And so that was part of Freedom Paddle Company's goal too, originally, was hosting retreats for these girls. So we host little getaways, even if it's just for an afternoon, for the girls that we work with, so that they can just get out of the clubs, even just for a minute, to have a real conversation with us and enjoy some time out on the water and the healing properties that nature brings. So, but we have one girl that we had hired. She's been in and out of the massage parlor for quite some time. She actually recently celebrated 1 year out of the massage parlor. And it was so cute. I had no idea what day she actually left. And I got a text message a couple weeks ago that said, I celebrated 1 year today. And she was so excited. But I think that's more common than not, is that a lot of these girls will want to leave super badly, and we'll help them with one resource. And then maybe she falls back into the lifestyle because it feels safe and it feels comfortable and it's what she knows. And so then we'll go back in there, and then, we'll give her another resource, and then she'll gravitate towards that one, and then, kind of move along. But it wasn't until we provided this sustainable employment for this one particular girl that she decided, you know what, I could do something else with my life. So we actually helped her get through dental school. And she is a dental assistant now, and she left our program, which was super sad. But yeah, it's just awesome to see her on her feet, and she's a mom now, and just, I don't know, it's really life-giving to see that one cupcake that seemed so insignificant to us ended up being complete life change for a woman in our community. And I just think that that's really cool how God works in the small stuff. So.
Yes. I mean, Brittany, what a powerful example, because sometimes in the busyness of what we're trying to accomplish, our goals and our outcomes, we forget to back all the way up and just really put so much emphasis on building relationship, which is the very model that Jesus Christ gave us, right? That relationship comes first and foremost, and that it is out of the flow of relationship that other things, other needs in our life can align, right? And so when we look at the beauty of what you're doing with Created Free, it's really starting foundationally with what it looks like just to love on someone who's in a place of hurt or fear, right? And to build them up and to connect with them and begin to show them what and who they can become. How amazing and how powerful. It's such, I'm really soaking that in right now. And Nancy, feel free to jump in anytime, but I'm just soaking in the power of relationship. And I think about how God likes us to work in parallels. And so, when our hearts are focused on our relationship with God first, then all else flows out of that. And here, what you're doing with Created Free is such an example. It's a biblical example.
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy way to do ministry. I wouldn't say that relationship building is necessarily easy. I mean,
that's
some
right.
girls have been in the clubs for years, and honestly, the longer a girl's in the club, the harder it is to convince her that maybe there is something else. And we've had to, kind of reevaluate our idea of success too. I mean, sometimes we'll go into the clubs and we'll learn a girl's real name instead of her stage name. And it's like, okay, there it was. Everybody hold on to that for a second. It might be a while until our next one. But with relationship building, it's hard to know, like, who's gonna, accept the love and gifts that we're bringing and resources and stuff like that, and who might shut us out. And we have to be okay with both and realize that there are two different spaces on a journey. And so you're
planting seeds, right? And at some point someone will come along to water that seed.
Yep.
Your job is just to be sensitive to where Holy Spirit leads. Exactly. And as you were just talking about how it's not easy to build relationship, because you're building relationships with women who you do have some similarities in the sense that we're human beings, we're women, there are things that we can connect on, but it's easy also in ministry to get focused on the ways that we can't connect with someone, which can really halt that relationship. And so as you were speaking, I was just thinking about the beauty of what it is that you do and how that models for us as Christians right now in a culture that's so divided, that there are ways that we can learn to build relationship and connect with one another on our similarities or even on our differences, and still love people within those differences, because that's what walks us to freedom. That's what walks us to connecting with God and into life-changing experiences.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the work you do. Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, thank you. I just love the simplicity of what God called you to do, one step at a time. He awakens something in your heart and soul at a little presentation. And one may have been one roadblock after another, but each time he gave you a simple and sincere way to touch the life of a woman who feels that her only option in life is to be used.
Yeah.
And instead you gave to her instead of expecting out of her. And that is God's way. And you are modeling that you are created free in order to reach out to these women and help them sense that freedom. And even though you couldn't access the actual strip club, you had a cupcake. And God uses us with our own passions. And
Yes.
it's so specially designed before you were born, how God said, you know, I'm going to give her the passion for cupcakes and making them. And that is going to be an entrance to rescuing women from sex slavery.
Only God.
How would we have come up with that, right? It is amazing, and how you just kept listening to God. And sometimes what he asks us to do seems kind of shallow or trite, but it's not. And he loves to take the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. And that is how he's using you to find ways to help these women in simple, real, authentic relationships, because they don't have them.
Nope.
And you're helping them understand what an authentic relationship is, what a giving relationship is, what an empowering, loving, dignifying relationship is. And you're even allowing the women the choice.
Mm-hmm.
Keep choosing. But eventually we think you will choose a better life. And we're here to help you. And that is glorious. And so we are so grateful to be able to connect with you today, Brittany, and to hear the all the great things you're doing. And I know some days it must seem like you're not changing the world, but you are. You are changing the world.
Thanks. Yep. To God be the glory.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yes, we're thankful to connect, and we're going to be checking in now with our next person, who is Laura Schultz Peepus. We're so glad to have you today, and you are the Associate Director of the United Way for Monroe and Lenawee counties for the past 3 years. You've been the Executive Director of the Catherine Cobb Safe House in Lenawee. You've been with the American Red Cross for 28 years, and 15 of those you were the CEO for the Monroe County chapter. You've also been a lecturer at Eastern Michigan University for 13 years for talking about leadership and nonprofit management. We're so glad you have a master's degree in public administration with nonprofit management and a social work bachelor's degree, both from Eastern Michigan University. And you're also a member of the Monroe County Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition for 8 years and the co-facilitator of the Lenawee Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition for the past 3.5 years. You're a Monroe County resident for life so far, and you live with your husband, Steve, in Monroe. We're so glad to have you here today, Laura, and thank you so much for your leadership in the world of government and nonprofit to help with this massive issue in our world.
Oh, and welcome, Laura. If you can just unmute yourself at the very bottom of your screen, that would be helpful. And while she's doing that, I'll just say I've known Laura and worked together with Laura for years. She's an absolutely amazing woman that gets much accomplished. And so we're excited to interview her today. Oh, I think we can hear you now.
Okay, good. Like, I didn't know I muted myself, but it's always good to see you, Michelle. And Nancy gave me a little bit of my background, and I, from the early on in my career, was not really a clinician like Michelle. I'm more of a macro level social worker. So I like doing this community work. I love it, actually. And this particular topic came to me when I was still with the Red Cross, when we started the Monroe, as part of the beginning of the Monroe Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. And delighted to know that when I got to Lenawee County, they too had a coalition. And I just want to give a shout out to my co-facilitator, Sister Marilyn Winter from the Adrian Dominican Sisters. They are a wonderful group of women. I call them fierce social justice warriors. And I tell them all the time, when I grow up, I want to be just like them. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, well, they're wonderful. And, you know, it takes so many people in all different spheres of our culture in order to really make a difference in tackling this whole issue. And so we're kind of wondering, you know, how did you get involved with this whole problem, and what this kind of unrelenting evil, and what brought your heart to thinking about it and getting involved at this level?
Well, when I was with the American Red Cross, I used to teach about international humanitarian law, which is about how the International Red Cross goes into war-torn areas. It's about being humanitarian. And so I used to teach about these humanitarian principles. And then I heard about this group getting together to talk about human trafficking, and I thought, wow, that's a pretty dark subject. And I should share with you that my father was retired from about 38 years of law enforcement in Monroe County. And I said, Dad, what is this? And as I got into it deeper, I'm like, wow, sometimes it can be kind of disheartening because one, the nature of this topic, we don't know the total statistics because it's so, it's hidden.
Mm-hmm.
And people that, as far as people, perpetrators and people that perpetrate this type of evil, getting prosecuted could be a long and lengthy process. And I said to my dad, Dad, how do you handle it when perpetrators, people that, do this evil, if they don't get they don't get punished, they don't get held accountable for their actions? And he said, you know what? You win some, you lose some, you go back to fight another day. And what Rebecca was talking about with her, she was talking about baby steps, really, it could be one step at a time, trying to help a person to get them out of that lifestyle, baby steps to holding people accountable for this stuff too. So you have to do it one step at a time. So I figured about it. So I just naturally gravitated toward this. And then when I came to work for the United Way 3 years ago, I found out part of their worldwide initiative is human trafficking. So you know what? My interest, I get to do it as part of my work. I feel very fortunate to be able to address some of these issues, even if they are very difficult sometimes.
So it's like you heard God call, "Hey, Laura Pipus," and you said, "Here I am, send me."
Yeah.
And
Yes.
takes you into one way after another, in order to help these women, help these kids. I think maybe one of the things that is heavy on people's hearts, besides kind of wanting to run away from what you can't fix, and a topic that seems so pervasive, what kind of warning signs do people, if we want to be kind of practical about it, if within the kids we know or the neighborhood or even in public, are there things that we can look for that, because God tells us to be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And we know he tells us about that in 1 Peter 5:8. But there are ways for us to be alert and of sober mind.
There is. And I want to preface this by saying that what we're talking about, because I also worked in domestic violence and sexual assault, human trafficking is all about power and control. And in the legal sense, they call it the force, fraud, and coercion in our national federal laws and our state of Michigan laws. It's force, fraud, and coercion. So who's vulnerable to this? Then I'll talk in just a second about the steps, looking for the signs. But it's people that maybe are vulnerable to substance abuse. Runaway youth are particularly, it's vulnerable peoples and vulnerable populations. Recent people that recently relocated or migrated, and this happens everywhere. Rebecca's mentioned all different parts of Upper Michigan, every county in the state, every country around the world. Human trafficking is the second largest money maker, other than drug trafficking, worldwide. So it's low risk and high returns for people that participate. So young people that are vulnerable, that unstable housing. Sometimes people have to be housed in different people's homes, and usually this stuff happens with people they're familiar with. So unstable housing, meaning they're living with someone, somebody might force them to do things in exchange for living there, or people that have mental health concerns. It could be people, recruitment tactics include intimate partners, families, job offer, a fraudulent job offer or opportunity, posing as someone who wants to be helpful or a benefactor. It could be any of those kind of things. So it could happen anywhere, anytime. And one of the myths, before I get into some of the specific signs or indicators, this is not about somebody taking somebody off the street and kidnapping them. That very rarely happens. It's usually the vulnerable people in a situation, someone, family, friends, someone who pretends to be a romantic partner in the beginning, forces them into it. And I'll share a story of hope with you later that was the case. But some of the signs, and I also want to mention, we are going to be talking about this. We're doing a program this Thursday evening in Lenawee County on Zoom to talk about this issue about social media, online, internet, young people being vulnerable to nefarious activity unknowingly on the internet. So that's also could be, parents should be really careful to watch that stuff. So there's sign indicators, what are your kids doing on social media? Do people appear disconnected from their family or friends, community or organizations or houses of worship? Has someone stopped attending school? We were now in COVID. I'm very concerned this past 10 months with COVID, domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking. People are not out, they could be stuck somewhere they don't have the means to get out. Is there sudden or dramatic changes in behavior? Do you, are they, are, do you find out somebody is engaging in some type of nefarious sexual activity? Disoriented, confused, signs of mental abuse, physical abuse. Do you see bruises on someone? These are kind of things to look for. Are people more fearful, timid, submissive than you particularly knew them to be? And this could be people that displaying vulnerabilities, and maybe they're not involved in this yet. But what about people who maybe you suspect are maybe be involved in this? So think about that. They may be vulnerable to it, or they are involved in it. We're trying to do statewide, nationwide, trying to do a lot of education with healthcare providers too. That people that are involved in trafficking don't usually show up at for health services unless it's really necessary. And trying to teach healthcare providers the signs to look for, which are some obvious, are people who look like they're sleep deprived, food deprived, in need of medical care. Is somebody behaving like they don't really want to, they don't want to be with somebody? Look for signs of maybe they're possibly being controlled. Hopefully this is making sense. I'm going down. Most of the information that we get is from a couple of different resources. The Polaris Project, I'll be familiar with them. They have a lot of great information on their website. The Department of Homeland Security has the Blue campaign, which is all about addressing human trafficking. So those are two good resources. So this is where we get some of this information. Is somebody living in unsuitable living conditions? Does somebody appear to be coached by someone else? Does somebody not have a lack of personal possessions or unstable housing? I mentioned that earlier. Do people have freedom of movement or not? And this could be anybody. This is no particular. It doesn't depend on socioeconomic status necessarily. It could be rich or poor. It could be adults, men and women, girls and boys. This is across the spectrum. It happens in all different socioeconomic stratas. So not to say that any of these indicators in any of all of these situations, but these are just some signs that you can look for. Something just doesn't feel right. Sometimes we have that spider sense, right?
Yeah.
Something isn't right.
Yeah. So basically, if something just doesn't feel right to you, you should not push that out of your senses. I read something online about a waitress that saw a child who was set up at a different table than his family, and he didn't get any food or water, and the rest of them were eating, and she just wrote a note to him that the others couldn't see, do you need help? And somehow he communicated that was true, and she rescued him. But yeah, it's not easy situations, but we tend to think, oh, that's just a feeling, or that there's nothing to that, and it's easy for us to dismiss it, but it can also be the Holy Spirit nudging us to do something that could save a child or a person's life, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's important to educate people about this stuff. And again, I'm the macro level person, the community level person, but we are happy to talk to any groups about it. We had, if you know who Teresa Flores is, she's written a book about. She was a. If you haven't read her book, The Slave Next Door, you should. Um, we had her at our Awareness Month event last year. She wrote a book about her experiences. She was upper white middle class. Her father was a big GE executive, and she was trafficked through a boyfriend. But she's written a book about it. She just had a 10th anniversary edition to talk more about her recovery. But she runs some recovery programs. But anyways, it can happen anywhere, and I
Laura,
think it's important.
I'd like to ask you a quick question. When the United Way addresses human trafficking or sexual exploitation, can you, in short, give us maybe a description of what that includes? Because there may be listeners here who aren't even exactly sure what we're referencing when we use these labels. What does it mean to be human trafficked or to be exploited sexually? Because, you know, again, we heard Brittany talking about being in massage parlors.
And I should also say that there's labor trafficking too, which we're talking about sex trafficking today. But it's people that are forced into, and it could be minors, it could be adults. Minors, and under the law, human trafficking is absolutely going to be prosecutable. For adults, it has to be force or coercion. They're being forced to perform sexual acts under duress, force, coercion, that kind of thing. So we, as a United Way, we are. I mean, we do fundraising to help our local agencies to do their missions, but we are also an advocacy organization. That's why I'm a part of this, trying to tell people, look, there are people here in the community, and we know that there's been some in Lenawee County in recent years. There's been some couple of cases prosecuted where teenagers have been forced to live with other adults and forced to perform sexual acts in order to stay there. So I guess that's being pretty blunt. I don't know if that's what you wanted, Michelle, but that's what it is.
I think that's important for us to know and understand. It doesn't just mean that someone's being sold on the street to prostitution and it looks like they're prostituting on the side of the road, but that it can mean that they're being held in homes, or if you need a bed to stay in and you're a teenager that's homeless, then I can make you engage in these behaviors. Or, you know, strip clubs where women are there because they have no other option on how to bring income into their homes, right?
Right. There's all kinds of reasons, or sometimes in some situations they are put on drugs, become addicted to drugs, so they can further coerce them into the specific behaviors. So I think by sharing this information, and it's important to let people know the signs to look for. But I also, one of the basic things people ask me, what can I do? What can I do? Well, obviously you can support local organizations that are doing anti-human trafficking work and education, and any local sexual assault and domestic violence shelter is also working with these. These are all common types of activities, but people can mentor, mentor a youth, mentor a vulnerable youth. In your church, there are vulnerable youth. Whatever groups or organizations, whatever you can do. There's Boys and Girls Club that, try to encourage. We want to do some work with our local Boys and Girls Club to help people want to know what they can do, mentor somebody. We want to build the resilience in youth and people that are vulnerable to do this. So that's a simple thing that you can do.
It's kind of like the philosophy that student goes into a gang situation where they feel powerless and they feel like they're not important and they feel kind of threatened and they want a family. And so they think if they become a part of a gang, they're going to have power and a sense of belonging. And once they get into it, they find out neither one is true and they're being used. But now they have stepped over the line and signed on the dotted line, and they don't know how to get out.
Yes, that's right. They may physically not know how to get out. They may not, in some cases, they might not know where they are. But I do know of a local young lady that was a student intern with us at the Catherine Cobb Safe House. Until she started, this was in her undergraduate degree, until she started learning more about this, she started realize that she's a human trafficking survivor. And it's not really prostitution. We have to change that mindset. This is not about prostitution. They're being forced into it.
Yes, right.
So, but it was her boyfriend, her high school boyfriend, that got her in, that she unknowingly did things for him. He sold her to his friends, his acquaintances. And so she never told anybody. Her family didn't know about it. Somehow or another, after high school, she was able to get away from him. Then she started doing this kind of work and realized what really happened to her. She now is a wife and a mother, and she's going through her master's degree, and she is speaking in public about this. She's part of our local coalition, but she is finally comfortable to talk about her experience, and she's doing great.
Wow, that is so exciting. That gives all of us hope and a reason to be involved in this and to pray about it and to give to it and to help people as God brings them across our path. Thank you so much, Laura. We really appreciate your time and your leadership in this difficult time.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks for the opportunity. Keep up the good work, you too, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and Nancy, I'm just really excited to introduce our next guest. And I say, what do you say? Let's go ahead and bring her right in.
Sure.
Okay. So I am happy to introduce Rebecca, and she also goes by Becky McDonald. She's the founder and president of Women at Risk International, WAR International. Becky has spent 3 decades in international work, which is so close to my heart. I'm excited to chat with her. As an organization, WAR International exists to create circles of protection and hope around those at risk through culturally sensitive, value-added intervention programs. WAR International addresses a variety of risk issues and has worked in more than 50 countries, including the United States. Although WAR International primarily functions as an aftercare organization, it is also heavily involved in advocacy. Becky is a highly sought-after speaker who travels the world, sharing WAR International's passion with universities, communities, law enforcement, legal and medical societies, embassies and foreign governments, and homeland security. And so, Rebecca McDonald, we are so honored to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for being a voice for the silenced.
Yes, what an amazing organization, and just an amazing vision that the Lord has put on your heart. And I'm so excited to hear more about that today.
So Women at Risk really began many years ago. I had the greatest privilege in the world of growing up overseas as an American in Pakistan, and from age 5 until college, in lands steeped in traditions of the Taliban. By 14, I had already been through 2 wars. My father was a surgeon who built a humanitarian hospital, and we moved over there from Grand Rapids when I was 5. And came home for college and met my husband, who got a PhD in international development, and we moved back overseas and raised our children over there. And so the earliest programs of Women at Risk began at my kitchen table with whatever was thrown in my pathway that day. I really never intended to be a founder or start something. I need that like I need a hole in my head. But I just needed to make a difference. And at an early age, one of many circumstances, my girlfriend, who was 14, at 14, the war that we went through was a civil war, and she was raped and fought back. And to teach her in her context, not all Muslim contexts are like this at all, but her context was extremely conservative, and she had no right to fight back. And they told her, "Your property, you're bought and sold in a marriage contract, you have no voice, how dare you cry out?" And so they poured acid down her throat to take away her vocal cords. And that experience in my life just gave me a passion to be the voice of the silenced and wrap arms of love around wounded women and children and men. We rescue men too. And give them a safe place just to rewrite the story of their life and start over. And so, as you said today, Women at Risk is in 57 countries now with over 200 partners. So one partner may be 5 safe houses, but that's one partner. And including the United States of America. So over a decade ago, Homeland Security called our offices here in Grand Rapids, and I learned that 300,000 minors, that's American citizens, are at risk. Your granddaughter, my granddaughter, your daughter, are at risk of trafficking every year. The FBI, the director of the FBI was on national news this year when COVID, well, last year now, when COVID hit. And he said that in 2019, the FBI alone, that doesn't count Homeland, nonprofits, law enforcement, anybody else, they alone rescued 1,500 minors in 2019. The Missing and Exploited Children's Center for Missing and Exploited Children reported that in 2020, their calls over 2019 were up 90.46%. I know that when COVID hit, the world came to a screeching halt, but risk escalated.
That's right.
The 911 line is ringing off the hook. The day COVID hit, I was hiding a woman in my car in Grand Rapids who had been running for her life. She was barefoot. They had stolen her ID and her underwear, and she was using socks as Kotex. And last week, we hid a woman in a hotel for over a week and just moved her to a safe house partner that we helped start in Michigan. And over a month ago, we had a call of a 3-week-old baby that was sold by its mother. And when Homeland came into my life, they were looking for a 6-month-old in the land of the free, a pay-per-view, a live feed of a rape of a 6-month-old. And we had just rescued a 1-month-old, sold at 2 weeks old. So the face of trafficking is becoming children. And we have been busier than ever under COVID. We don't run, we don't hide, we're not afraid of risk. We named ourselves after risk, Women at Risk International. But seriously, we have seen, in fact, tonight I will be doing a Zoom. If anybody wants to join it, they're welcome to. And we'll be talking about the 5 ways that we have observed that COVID has changed the face of trafficking. 3 of them are domestic. And so we're just quietly and intentionally behind the scenes responding to the issue. We started doing the civilian first responder training, which is our 8-hour training. And we do that in medical. We're licensed in all 50 states to train medical training. And we do it Fortune 500 companies. I'll be flying to Germany. We do military bases, law enforcement. I was training Florida last week, Homeland, their task force and their law enforcement. And so just how to know the signs, how to respond, how not to respond, and how to share this with your circle of influence in an age-appropriate way. And so if it's the State Department sends to our headquarters international delegations. So when we're dealing with them, we're talking about the nexus or the interaction, the overlap between, so Egypt they did come to our headquarters. We talk about their laws and our laws and the strengths and weaknesses of each sets of laws and work on those things. But you know, our passion is just to create safe places around wounded people and give them a place to rewrite the story of their life and start over. And it's hard work, but it's intensely rewarding work. When you rescue a person who's been chained to a wall with a shackle around their neck, literally, true story, sold to whoever comes to the front door, and they're like that for 11 months, and they're rescued at 7 years old. And I was swinging upside down the swing set with that little girl that night when she came in. You know that she has a lot of healing, but she will never face that again. She'll go to school. She will, there are night nannies who are paid to stay awake at night and crawl in bed and rock that baby back to sleep when they cry, which is what we want for our babies, right? And so we've graduated doctors and lawyers and school teachers and cosmetologists, and an engineer recently was brought to us at 4 and just graduated from engineering school and is raising his siblings because his mother brought him to us as a minor. She was a sex slave. And so when you stick at it long enough, you have the luxury of hindsight and you can see generational change. It's powerful to rescue one. But when you see 3 generations sitting at a banquet that we hold every year for rescued women, and you see the grandmother, the mother, and the granddaughter all headed in a different direction, that is systemic change. That is generational change. So if we hear that a family or a village is teaching their children that they have to go to the red light district, so 90% of the girls in that village are going to the red light district and think that's it, we take our sewing academy back there, we take our mushroom farming, cosmetology, whatever it takes to train the adult girls so they don't end up at our safe houses. So we are involved in rescue 3 ways. One is curative. That's identifying a person who's there against their will and helping them out of that and giving them a job. 90% of the women who get picked up in a police raid in Cambodia and sent home without job training get resold. When you're sold once, you're messed up. When you're sold twice, and if you're a Buddhist and you believe in karma, you totally give in. You're like, this has to be my fault. And so rescue is not the end. It's the beginning of a journey. It's not a destination. It's a journey, and it's becoming the family that's been denied them. I do want to say that, you know, when we speak at schools and universities, we speak to the fact that the UN did a study, 60% of human traffickers are women. Women. So the newest trend in America is 15 to 18-year-old cool girls at school recruiting your 9 and 12-year-old to go to a party they can't drive themselves home from. And so when we do our 8-hour training day, we show video of these girls saying, well, I want my $400 Prada bag, and I come from a good family, and I just need my stuff. And so the worst stitches I've ever had to get a woman was a woman beating a woman for 7 hours. And over 90% of all trafficking victims know their trafficker. The #1 trafficker, according to one study, is family. A lot of the girls we rescue are not in strip clubs. They're not out and about. Their parents may go to church and hunt at church, and they're being sold from their bedroom. They're upper middle class. It knows no socioeconomic boundaries. And so we are trying to help them rewrite the story of their life and restore that family that's been denied them. The second highest is the fake boyfriend, what we call the savant trafficker. The good news is training really works. So I was on a Zoom 2 nights ago, and the woman that got on in New York heard me speak at our training, 8-hour training, went home, talked to her 12-year-old who was being groomed by a man on the internet, and she'd already sent him pictures of her, inappropriate pictures. So we had a woman attend a CFR in Michigan, and a year later her daughter was trafficked and she knew what to do, and we were able to call the FBI, and she was picked up in a police raid, and they are reunited. We had a survivor call her brother, and he called us at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. By Saturday, she was in a treatment program. By Sunday, by Saturday, she was rescued by Homeland, and by Sunday, she was in a treatment program. So sometimes it is simple, sometimes it isn't, but really it's common sense. It's not rocket science, what any of us do. But then we've graduated, whatever their dream is. Our dream is to help them dream. And I sat here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and said to a woman once, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't care whether they're 12, 22, or 52. And she recoiled from me and she said, oh, I've learned never to dream. And I said, start now. So that's what we want. That's what we want for our children, right? So wraparound services right here. And it might mean that we have to teach them to make something like my jewelry here that I'm wearing, or earrings, or those candles over there. But we have to give them a way to support themselves immediately while they're getting all the counseling, stitches, housing, childcare, whatever that is, and then giving them that second chance at life. Probably one of the best illustrations of how this works is a story here on outreach. I met a woman in the red light district here and learned her story and learned that she wanted out. And I told her, come to my office. She came, and for 3 hours, we tried to write a resume for a woman who had only known the abuse of a strip club and rape in the military. Finally, I looked at her, I said, there's nothing we can say that's honest. Do you want to make jewelry? She's like, what? So she became our first woman in our U.S. training center. We had women running into our headquarters, and we're a global headquarters here, and we couldn't say, well, we care about this around the world, but back out on the street with you. So we have processed well over 150 women and children upstairs in our U.S. training center there. And so we pulled her in. She was the first in that program. And when I was speaking at Quantico to the Marine Generals Conference, their wives were buying jewelry, and they were fighting over one of the necklaces that she made. All her pearls are real. And I came back to Grand Rapids, sat down in front of her and said, Dee, the most powerful men in the Marine Corps' wives are fighting over the work of your hands. And she jumped up, ran around that table and sang a worship song. And we have a CD with songs. We took them to Reba McEntire's studio, and they recorded their own choice of songs. Some they wrote themselves, some they chose. But she was able to go home and tell her children, your mama is an artisan, and wipe out her past and build a resume. And she was just commissioned in Grand Rapids to paint 5 murals for the city. She has her own business, and we were able to get her a scholarship at Kendall School of Design. So that's organic dignity. You can tell a person till you're blue in the face they have worth and dignity because they were created in the image of the Elohim creator God. But when women fight over the work of their hands, that is authentic dignity. That's not a hand out, that's a hand up. So in the last 7 years, we have sold $9 million in their product. And that is not about $9 million. That is about tens of millions of dollars in a safe place with wraparound services, with worth and dignity and the whisper of true worth and who they are. And we're non-sectarian. We take anybody. But when they ask us, why do you care when nobody cares? That's $1 million question. And so for sure, I will give a person a fish if they're starving, but can I please teach them to fish, make fishing poles, sell their fish, sell their poles, and create a fishing community? Because that's where the worth and dignity come organically, and they learn to make a living. If you give $25 to a domestic abuse shelter, God bless you, you helped a woman running from death. You give $25 to a social enterprise domestic abuse shelter, and we're teaching her to turn it into $50, $80, $100, and we're giving her a way. We're not just patching her up and sending her back out. We're giving her a way to support herself with an ongoing relationship forever with us, should they want it. And so that story of worth and dignity comes from total healing. And the good news is I have thousands of stories. When you've been at it this long, you can look back and you can see generational change.
Yes.
And that's what keeps me going.
Rebecca, what an absolutely amazing story, and really just the work you're doing. There are no words to put to the impact that you're creating. And what I keep thinking is how powerful all of the neurological studies really teach us. We have to focus on not the deficits or the story of struggle, but actually to create more momentum for change in that generational change. We have to focus on what can become and the stories of what people have become. And so as you're speaking, I can hear that naturally that is the focus of the work at war. And that is why brains are changing, meaning then behavior patterns are changing, and then there's generational change. So you're changing people and families for a lifetime because the focus is on what they can do and what they can accomplish. And I want to give some space here for Nancy to talk, but I do want to say, yes, please give us the link for the jewelry and how we purchase. And
if you use the code Becky's Gift, BECKYSGIFT, you get a 10% discount. And so it'll help with the shipping. Unless you're over a certain amount, it's free shipping anyway. But seriously, when you shop, you are shopping to lift these women. It goes and pays their salaries. It doesn't pay for their stitches and their, staffing, but it pays their salaries. And in countries where a man might make $100 a month, these women are making 3 times that. And so they may be illiterate, but they know right there, there's worth and dignity there. And sometimes in a really worst case scenario, I have to tell our staff, look to their children. Yes, this woman may never become all that you want her to be, but her children are worth it. Many times the women heal and rise up. We have one woman, I helped her get out of a window in Amsterdam. She's married, she has a son, and she just started her own nonprofit in Florida. So there are many happy endings, and that's the joy of doing what you do when you stick with it long enough. But definitely for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation, it's worth the time and effort. And anybody who's raised children understands that, right? It's a long haul. It's not overnight fix it. And so, Albert Einstein said the world will be destroyed not by evil people, but by good people who see evil and do nothing. And y'all are good people. And we can do something. And my passion is to give you tangible ways to make a difference in your circle of influence and be a safe place to those you love. And sure, join us at War, shop. If you're going to buy soap made by Rescued American West Michigan women. If you're going to buy candles, buy those candles.
Yeah.
You can teach even your children to purchase with a purpose when you look at those kinds of ways of making a difference. And so our passion, ever since my playmate was silenced, so help me God, if it takes every last breath in my body, I will be the voice of the silence to set them free. And so I appreciate what's happening in Michigan. And we've come a long way in Michigan. We used to have a D grade. We now have a B grade.
Wow.
That's because of law changes. That's, the Michigan Anti-Trafficking Task Force that I serve on has done so many good things, and there are growing numbers of people addressing this. So we're on the right trajectory. We have a long way to go, and COVID has made it much, much worse.
Yes.
I got a call from Homeland the other day, and he was panicking because he was supposed to call me back, but he's like, I don't know what's going on. I just can't get off the phone. I'm in the middle of so many. Well, you know what? Risk has escalated. Yeah. And those of us in the trenches, dealing with that, are dealing with that constantly. And, but you just wrap your arms around it and figure it out one story at a time, one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm sure we have women listening who would love to support however they can. And so I'm thinking of 2 things as we wind down here. One, I would love for you also to share the link with us so that those listening who want further training can kind of check in on the training that you offer. And then maybe as a future event, She Leads Michigan and She Speaks could partner with you for a public training on Zoom so that we can, as women of faith and women of influence, understand how to better impact and partner with you to address this major social issue.
If they go to warinternational.org, spell out international, WAR stands for Women at Risk, or they go to War Chest Boutique, that's the product where you can shop online and use the Becky's Gift for 10% off. If you just go to info at warinternational.org, you can tell us today that you want the link for tonight's Zoom when we talk about how COVID has changed trafficking, and we'll send you that. But War International or Women at Risk International or War Chest Boutique, all of those will take you to the shopping site, and there's a way to donate on there too if that's what you're asking. But we do a Zoom once a month, and we have a survivor speak. And next month, it will be the survivor whose story I told you about, who will be speaking. But tonight we are just discussing the way COVID has impacted trafficking, and 5 ways. 3 of them are domestic, 2 of them are international. But thank you, ladies, for being a voice and for what you're doing. Women come together, and when women who are empowered empower others, it is amazing. A famous man once said, if women ever unite around one common purpose, the world will see a force like they have never seen before.
Yes.
That's really true, because women have united around this. We want to be a safe place to our babies, and we want to deter the infanticide of our future. And there is an imminent danger and issue, and we can do something about it. It's really not that hard to make a difference.
Wow, thank you so much. Nancy?
Yeah, thank you so much, Vicki. We are in awe of what God is accomplishing through you, and we're so grateful for your obedience in following him. And we want to finish with a powerful musical moment that reminds us all about God's work in our life and that he is the King of our heart. Tune in next week. We're going to talk to our She Leads Michigan Native American, Maria Gergrich, who will talk about God's work in her life as she speaks her story. And now we're going to go to Rachel and her Unite Community Music's beautiful prayer in song, King of My Heart.
We're back. I think we're still waiting for the song to come up. And if not, I just was reflecting on, how amazing our guests were today and the incredible, impactful work that's being done. I just can't get over all that Becky shared. And even I was reflecting on when God plants a vision in your heart, even if it's small and it starts at your kitchen table, the impact that vision can have when you trust, just stepping out moment by moment. It's incredible.
So many different details in life led to the weaving of such a major statement and an undoing of generational replication of evil.
Yes.
That is just an amazing idea, how, she has all these different generations, even at their banquet, to celebrate how God stopped it.
Yes.
How he can turn what seems so impossible. It is true. It's beauty for ashes. And
it is.
Would say, oh, that's a dead end road. That's completely impossible. And we stand at the precipice of it and look down and just see little rotten ashes. But when he lifts our head to see his face and his potential and his power, that is limitless. And so
I agree.
It's hard for us to do that,
It is. So I am just thankful for how God is using every single woman that's a part of She Leads and a part of She Speaks. And just so I feel so honored some days to be able to interview each of these women and build connection with them. And so please check out all of our guests, their websites, the work that they're doing, that we interviewed today, and see how you can best support them. Because when you're supporting each of their individual works, and you're really changing lives. We're not just supporting an institution or, a great idea, but we're changing lives. And as women of faith, that's our responsibility, to bring beauty from ashes in whatever way that we can. I love that.
Let the King of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. And let the King of my heart be the shadow where I I hide the ransom for my life. Oh, here's my song. You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, so good. Oh, you are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, so good. Oh, let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the King of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Yeah, he is my song. You are good, you're good. You are good, you're good. Oh, you are good, so good to me, yeah. You are good, you're good. Oh, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down, no, no. You're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let me down, no, no. You're never gonna let me down, no. You're never gonna let me down, no, no. You're never gonna let me down, no. You're never gonna let me